All right, ready for a deep dive today?
Absolutely. Always ready to dive in.
We're tackling the Gulag Archipelago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a heavy one. Brutal, powerful. They say this book helped bring down the Soviet Union itself.
It's that powerful, huh?
And we're going beyond just the facts, right? We want to understand the human cost of the Gulag. Not just for the prisoners, but for the whole of Soviet society.
And what better guide than Alexander Solzhenitsyn? This wasn't just research for him.
Right, he lived it.
Years in the Gulag himself. So when he writes, it's not some detached history.
It's personal.
Absolutely. You feel the weight of every word. And he takes us back to the very start. How did this system even come to be? Imagine. Russia, post-revolution, the communist state is rising.
Okay, so you've got chaos, upheaval.
Exactly. And who are their targets at first? The aristocracy, the wealthy, the usual suspects, right? But it didn't stop there, did it?
No way. It's like this snowball effect.
Yeah.
Suddenly, intellectuals are enemies, writers, artists.
Anyone deemed a threat to their ideology.
Even if it was just a suspicion.
Exactly. You didn't have to do anything wrong, just be perceived as a threat. And the scale of it, just massive. Solzhenitsyn quotes a demographer, estimates up to 60 million deaths.
60 million.
Now, even if that number's off and official figures later on were lower, it's still
Horrific.
There's no other word for it. Just a staggering loss of life.
It's hard to even fathom that many people. And what Solzhenitsyn does so well, he doesn't let us forget the faces behind the numbers, you know? He takes us into the Gulag, shows us how it worked, down to the arrests themselves, the way they were carried out.
It's the randomness that gets me. You could be anywhere, doing anything. He mentions people taken from their homes in the dead of night.
Oh.
Or just walking down the street, grabbed off the sidewalk, even pulled out of hospitals mid-surgery.
No way.
Imagine the terror of that, never knowing if this is the day they come for you.
Like living in a nightmare you can't wake up from.
Exactly. And once they had you, that's when the real psychological games began, the interrogations. Solzhenitsyn doesn't hold back on the details.
Brutal.
Sleep deprivation, starvation, torture. All designed to break you down, make you confess to anything.
And they'd use any tactic they could, right?
Yeah.
Like good cop, bad cop, threatening your family.
It's all there. Anything to elicit a confession, whether you were guilty or not.
There's this one story that just stuck with me. I don't know if you remember it, but about an interrogator who forced a prisoner to watch him assault a young woman.
Oh, God, that's right.
I mean, just pure evil. Makes you wonder what kind of scars, mental scars, that left on the survivors.
It wasn't enough to punish the body. They had to break the spirit, too.
It's chilling, really. And then, as if things couldn't get any worse, there was this thing called the second camp term, right?
Oh, yeah. You'd served your time. You're about to be released. You're finally going to taste freedom again.
And then, bam, they hit you with these bogus charges, slap on another sentence.
Just another way to keep the prisoners in a constant state of fear and uncertainty.
It's inhumane. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse.
The system was designed to crush any hope you had left.
And on top of all that psychological pressure, the actual conditions inside the Gulag. It's hard to imagine anyone surviving that.
It was brutal. Solzhenitsyn doesn't hold back, overcrowding so bad you could barely breathe. Starvation rations, barely enough to keep a bird alive.
In the winters in Russia.
Brutal. And the clothes they were given were just rags, totally useless against the cold. Then there was the labor itself, just back-breaking work.
And often for no reason, right? Like they weren't even trying to be productive.
It was about breaking their bodies, their spirits.
I remember reading about the prisoners so desperate they were scavenging for scraps.
Anything to survive.
Solzhenitsyn describes them fighting over crumbs like wild animals.
And even in that darkness, there were glimmers of resistance. Solzhenitsyn talks about a hunger strike at one camp division, though, 1, I think it was.
A hunger strike? I mean, they were already starving. What could they possibly hope to achieve?
It's remarkable, isn't it? But that's the human spirit for you. I guess they were demanding better food, better treatment in general, recognition of their basic rights.
And did it work?
It's hard to say it was a complete success, but there were small victories, a few concessions from the guards, maybe some slightly better food, who knows?
I bet even those small wins felt huge in that environment.
Oh, absolutely. A glimmer of hope in all that darkness. And the hunger strike wasn't the only kind of resistance. People tried to escape, too.
Oh, man. Those escape stories are something else. You can't help but root for them, risking it all for a shot at freedom.
Desperate times, desperate measures, right? Solzhenitsyn mentions this one prisoner, Tenno, tried to escape multiple times. Yeah, he was something else. Spent months, years even, planning these elaborate escapes, practiced every step in his mind, visualizing the whole thing.
Wow. That takes some serious mental strength, to hold on to that hope in those conditions.
It really does. And not all of them made it, of course, but the fact that they tried, that they refused to be broken, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
But, the legacy of the Gulag, it's bigger than just the camps themselves. Solzhenitsyn makes that very clear.
Right. It's like this darkness spread out, touched every part of Soviet life.
Exactly. Created this atmosphere of fear, suspicion. You never knew who to trust. Could be your neighbor, your friend, even your own family turning you in.
It's chilling. Solzhenitsyn even mentions children being imprisoned.
It's heartbreaking. Ripped away from their parents, just gone. That's the thing about these totalitarian regimes. They turn people against each other. Trust becomes dangerous.
And that's something that lingered even after the Gulag was gone, didn't it?
Yeah.
That suspicion, that fear.
Oh, those scars run deep. It's like a wound that never fully heals. But, Solzhenitsyn doesn't just want us to be horrified by all this. He wants us to think, to really wrestle with what it all means.
It's about human nature, isn't it?
Exactly. He asks these tough questions. What would you have done? Could you have resisted? Would you have been a victim, a perpetrator, or something in between? It's easy to judge from a distance, but
It makes you question everything, doesn't it?
it does. Your own values, your beliefs, your strength makes you wonder if you've got the guts to stand up for what's right when it really counts.
It's easy to say we would have resisted, but Solzhenitsyn makes it clear it wasn't always that simple.
No, not at all. But even in the darkest corners, you see flickers of humanity. People finding ways to hold on to their dignity, to help each other, to resist.
That's what gets me. Even amidst all that suffering, there's still this spark. It's like what makes us human can't be completely extinguished,
Absolutely. And Solzhenitsyn sees that too. He doesn't let us forget the horror, but he also shows us the resilience, the courage, those small acts of defiance that kept people going.
So what do we do with that? As readers, we finish this book, it's heavy, it's disturbing. What are we supposed to take away from it?
For me, it's a wake-up call, a reminder that freedom is precious, never guaranteed. The Gulag might seem like ancient history, but the things that allowed it to happen, those dangers are still out there.
So it's about being vigilant, about fighting against injustice wherever we see it.
Exactly. Speaking out against oppression, holding those in power accountable, never taking our freedom for granted because it can be lost so easily.
And I think it's also about remembering, right? Honoring those who suffered, making sure their stories are heard.
Absolutely. That's what Solzhenitsyn believed, that silence was complicity. By telling these stories, bearing witness to the truth, we make sure it's never forgotten.
And hopefully, never repeated.
Exactly. If we can learn from the past, if we can find the strength to face these dark chapters of human history, then maybe, just maybe, we can create a better future.
A future where something like the Gulag is unthinkable.
That's the goal.
On that note, to everyone listening, if you're feeling even a fraction of what we are after these excerpts, do yourself a favor. Pick up the Gulag Archipelago and read the whole thing.
It's not an easy read, but it's a necessary one.
It'll stay with you, that's for sure.
It might even change you.
And on that note, we'll leave you to continue your own explorations. Until next time.